Welcome to the Way to Go podcast. I'm Bill McMinn, along with me and Steve Arsulic. Been talking about the 7 deadly sins written by James Stalker. And I love saying his name every time. I don't want to quit the series just because I like making fun of the name Stalker. I probably would have changed it. You know, maybe it had a different connotation back then. Hey, meet the Stalker family. Anyway, 7 deadly sins, he said, well, sloth. So I see the term up there. I'm like, oh, cool. We're going to talk about laziness. But then as I read the chapter, he wasn't really talking about laziness. He was talking more, it sounded like, more of like listlessness or spiritual deadness and that kind of stuff. So it was an old English term called axity, which there's a term you hear every day. Hey, do you have spiritual axity? I'm just wondering if you do. But anyway, it means this: variously defined as a state of listlessness or torpor, another word I don't use, of not caring or not being concerned with one's position or condition in the world. In ancient Greece, it literally meant an inert state without pain or care. Early Christian monks used, and by the way, I think we're medicating people to get them back to that state. Right. Early Christian monks used the term to define the spiritual state of listlessness, and from there the term developed as a markedly Christian moral tone. In modern times, it has been taken up by literary figures and connected to depression. So I'm like, okay, it's kind of your listless, no like spiritual life. There's not like any fervor in your spiritual walk with God. You kind of got lazy about things. You're mechanical, going through just motions, right?
Yeah, and I think, well, you're talking about deadly sins. Deadly in what ways? Because these are things that can separate you from God. And so how can this sloth, this acidity or whatever it is, that you can get into is saying, well, why is this deadly? What's a danger of it, right? I mean, really what kind of get to these things, danger, Will Robinson, we just joked about it here a little bit ago, but what's the thing that makes this dangerous? What makes it so deadly that we should be going, hey, you better take note,
right? Because
here's something that's causing a problem. And I don't know if I think this depression thing is maybe devolved into something a little bit different. We're not talking about somebody being depressed, mental illness. I think it's a little bit more of I think it is definitely a little bit more of this spiritual conditioning of where we're at.
I'll
being
say
careful.
It like this. I saw this a long time ago, and this is probably even back in the 90s. I was working with the youth group, and these kids were really bored with life. And there's a word that means ennui, and or that's how it's said. It's ennui, and it means just you're kind of bored with life. There's a certain, like he says, listlessness. You're just not happy as you look to the future. There's like no energy in you. And I remember I used to get my hair cut by a guy named Mark Helmer when he used to cut hair. And we would talk about these things. And we would talk about how the young people seem so down. Like all their music they're listening to is like down music. Life's terrible. It's horrible. It's hard. And we would talk about, why is this an attitude that we never had growing up? Like we never looked at life as terrible or so hard or so miserable. And he said, you know why? Because we earned everything we had. We were out there working. We were out there. If you wanted a model kit, if you wanted clothes, if you wanted to change something on your bike, you had to go out there and figure it out on your own. You would buy yourself a football. You would play with that football for years, man, the same football till you absolutely wore it out. You remember that? Those days, you would just play with this. So you had to earn everything. You didn't have time to be sitting around so self-focused that life just seemed terrible and you're starting to lose purpose for living, because we always had something to do. And I think that in some ways in this, it's just that lack of occupation or excitement. You're just not really doing a lot. And it's easy to sit around and complain about everything and get down. You know what I mean? Like you're just feeling down, like you don't really have any life or zest or energy.
And I think I reflect back a little bit on it. I think it's sometimes too, when you're younger, it just seems like there's so much life ahead that, is this really, it's almost can be overwhelming, I think, to a point. It could be like, well, what can I really, not caring about the future is like, well, it's just so far off.
Right.
What really matters other than today is I am a little bit, there's not much going on, or maybe it is a little bit a downtime or whatever. Right. I think affluence certainly plays into all of that.
Right.
So I agree with that, but I think a little bit of it is, I think even when I was young, sometimes you just think about, it seems like summer's lasted a little bit longer, but now that everything goes by so much faster. I mean, I think a perspective of the overall lengths of time. I mean, especially as we get older,
Yeah, right.
I think, you look back in your life now, my gosh, 30 years passed like that.
Right.
And it's like, when you're young, you're going, oh my God, 30 years. That's a lifetime.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you think 50 was like you're good as dead.
Right.
Now you're over 50 and you're like, 50's nothing.
Right.
I think it's a perspective thing a little bit too.
It is because life does go quickly. But I think
but as a teen,
listen, I was not
5 years of your life where it's 35% of your 33% of your existence.
Right.
It's like 5 years is a forever.
I was happy. I was a happy kid. I remember being in college. People would ask me, "Why are you so happy? Why are you so happy?" I grew up in a poor home. We didn't have much. We drove junkers. We had to fight for everything, that we had. But I think that's one of the reasons, because I wasn't sitting around thinking about and complaining about all the different things that I thought were wrong about the world. I was out there surviving.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is
and I was very happy in my life, and I was very happy to work. I was helping my family. I think that was part of it too. Like 70% of everything I made went to my dad. And then 60% of everything I made went to my dad to help pay bills my junior and senior year of high school. We'd have to go out and cut wood to heat the house. Like, we were always doing something. Like, we'd go get home from school, we'd have to bring wood in to put in the fire. So to put in the fire or the wood burner downstairs, because that's how we heated our home. You had to work to survive. I mean, this was not like an option. So I think maybe because of that, we had so many goals to drive towards. We had so many things to work towards that we were preoccupied, not just with self. And I think that when there's this preoccupation with self, there can be a certain unhappiness, with life.
I think my boys are going to graduate college here this weekend, and I think
Congrats.
thank you. But I think about right now, very much conscious in their mind is where are we going from here. But I think about, like, when you first going, what are you going to major in? What do you want to study? I don't know. Because I think it's like some of that, the unawareness is like, because there's so much time yet, I don't need to make a decision.
Right.
Or people get there, or some people they're getting hooked into going and paying for an outrageously priced school because it's like, well, I got my whole life to worry about it.
Right.
Well, no, you don't have forever to worry about it because graduation is coming, or you're gonna have to pay that next tuition, or the grades are coming. There's a consequence, and yet somehow we avoid that, or just don't think about it, or I'm gonna get a degree in some stupid studies thing that I'm never going to be able to pay my degree with.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well, we weren't prepared. I mean, I think that's what some of this danger comes back to, is this unpreparedness with which it leaves you in a mindset trapped that, I got forever. I don't need to worry about it now. Because I can bring this back to spiritual things like Christianity. The danger of the sloth of this, of being aesthete is that, I've got forever to reconcile my sins with God. I've got forever to grow closer to Jesus Christ. I've got forever to worry about Jesus. Today,
as in
I don't have to worry.
You're talking about procrastinating on decisions.
Where it says, I don't have a care for tomorrow.
Right.
I don't have any cares. So, I got time.
Right.
I don't need to do. I got time. Right. I don't need to evaluate my life. I don't need to acknowledge my sins. I got time.
Right.
And that's a danger, right? This is why it's deadly.
It is, but I think
because we haven't done this evaluation.
Are not caring or being concerned because they're unhappy. Like, you read some of the things like James Stalker wrote about in his book, and he was talking about authors that were constantly raging in society, constantly unhappy. Monks being in a monastery and being listless and lifeless and unhappy with their existence because they're doing things mechanical and they're not breathing life into their existence. Where we know spiritually, when you have that relationship with God, that's definitely breathing life into your existence. And I think that's a great thing. Now, he said, one thing he talks about, he said religious exercises, and bringing it back to sloth and spiritual things, religious exercises were never intended to absorb the whole of our time, but to supply strength for the discharge of duty in the family and in the marketplaces, and the attempt to override nature cannot but have its revenge. And what he's saying is, listen, monasteries, by the way, even in Les Miserables, which is a famous book by Victor Hugo, I mean, that guy... Part of the reason that he wrote that book was to take on monasteries, because that's one of the places where Cosette hid out with Jean Valjean. was to take on the plight and how terrible it was. And even James Stalker is ripping on monasteries as being, this is not the way God designed us to live. He did not design us to live that we come away from people, stay by ourselves, and just live by ourselves for us and God, and we're not doing for other people. That's not the right way to live. And he said, if you don't realize that, your prayer time should be about getting out there and helping other people. Your prayer time should be about living and what's going on. And I think that's a great challenge because, my prayer time shouldn't just be about me. I mean, my prayer time should be about, hey, who needs Christ? Today when I was praying, actually, I was praying about the drug problem in our county. I was praying for the Maya House and for their success at trying to save the lives of children in the womb. That's the kind of stuff like I was focused on. And I was thinking today as I was praying, I'm like, Bill, you need to pray about these things more often because that to me is, praying for doing something and getting out there and changing life and changing the world, not just a complete self-focus. Oh Lord, I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't have. Right. No, just pray.
Well, I think these religious practices too. I think about Martin Luther, who was a Roman Catholic monk before, he was involved with his role in the Protestant Reformation. He ultimately, moves away. He denounces the monastery. He goes away from it because he realizes that his own personal asceticism, his own self-denial, didn't draw him closer to God.
Right.
It didn't make him more pious.
Right.
And so the whole thing of this monk or practicing these religious exercises didn't draw one closer to God. Because it was like snooze time. It was like, I'm doing all these things, so I'm a little bit more pious than you.
Right.
Or I'm a little bit closer to God. And he goes, no, that's nonsense. The real thriving, spiritually active person is every bit as close as the most pious monk you can find out there.
Right. Well, what about this statement, Steve? That, because this is what I put a note to myself, that I think that he's saying that spiritual discipline is not an end in and of itself. And it really made me think about it. I guess if I made prayer an end in and of itself, and I'm just praying to pray, or I'm just reading the Bible to do something. I'm going to read the Bible because I should, and I'm going to do it to check it off a list. And it's more of a mechanical thing. I'm just doing it to do it. I don't think that anything, you have a golf league tonight that's meeting and guys are going to get together and play golf together. It almost can never be like an end in and of itself. Maybe there's nothing that we do that's an end in and of itself, because somehow it's going to be a closed circuit. It's got to flow like, hey, if I'm out here doing these things, how am I helping others? How am I maybe getting closer to God? How am I building into something else that's leading somewhere? You know what I'm saying? Like branching into leading to other things that are good, as opposed to everything I do is just an end in and of itself. I think that makes it wearisome. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm just going to pray as an end in and of itself, I'm just doing it to do it, not realizing, hey, no, this is a walk with God. This is helping other people. This is helping my family. This is what I should do. Man, this is a joy. This is great. It's not just an end in and of itself. I mean, there's a purpose, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. I think a little bit because it's like, well, what is our real purpose of it? I mean, it's great. There's personal edification in it, but what good does it do somebody else, or where is it helping lead somebody go, or what's our real purpose for being out there and engaging in the world, or helping it out, or share the light of Christ, or to be this light? Yeah, if it's all just done, all I'm going to do is wall myself into the church and I'm never going to go. I'm going to go to the mountaintop alone in isolation and I'm going to be super spiritual.
Right.
Well, that's meaningless because we're not interacting, I think, the way we're supposed to be.
Right.
And I think that's
or
where I think it's right.
Love or
and this is why it's deadly, because you're not really fulfilling God's purpose for your life. Here's your call. We're called to be good. The world is good. There's a lot of good in the world. A lot of people do a lot of good things, but good doesn't get you anything.
Right.
Being good doesn't get you closer to Christ.
Right. Being
good doesn't save you.
No, but being bad can get you further from Christ.
Right, but I'm saying, but it's again because I think, well, we got this laissez-faire attitude that, well, it's good enough, or I don't have to worry about tomorrow, or I don't have to worry about Jesus coming back, or I don't have to worry about it. So there's a mechanic, though. There's a mechanic that you can get into where you're just checking it off a list, and I think that he's battling against that. And you think about the life of Christ, Steve. Jesus Christ, setting the example, did not come and live his life in isolation. He did not come and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go up to the mountainside by myself, and I'm going to stay on the mountaintop by myself.
not talking to anyone, just talking to God for my whole existence. And I'm going to make my time spent with God in and of itself, but it's not really going to carry me to love people, heal people, teach people. That is clearly not. At times, Christ separated himself to pray. At times. It wasn't all he did. It was he was praying so that he could go off and do other things. Even when it comes to your sex life and marriage, it's saying do not deprive each other. If you do, it's only a set time, a short time, so that the devil can't get in. And that's only for prayer. So the devil can't get into that relationship. It's not just, I'm going to separate from my spouse and I'm not going to show her love and I'm just going to be about me. No, I have to be an unselfish son of a gun, right? An unselfish human being. I can't be that self-centered person. I've got to say, no, I'm going to do the right thing.
And I think it all comes back to this whole idea of this listlessness or this sloth or why. Because I think it just takes us from maybe we're on this spiritual high to all of a sudden we're just kind of blah, or we're just moving on, and we're really, what's the point? What's the purpose? Just bag it. I'm just going to zone out over here, or I'll break out my phone, or I'll escape to a television, or we'll binge the latest Netflix series. We'll just do something just to escape it all. I think those are some of the things where the dangers come.
I think people,
again, because why is it deadly? What's the problem? What is it doing? Because it's moving us from what we're intended and we go somewhere else.
Like a true walk with God. Yeah, a true walk with God, something that brings energy and brings life into us. So I think doing it the same way wouldn't be a good thing. And I think that anything that we're doing the same way all the time, maybe we do need to bring some life into it, whether you read a devotional book or even doing podcasts.
Yeah, I think about some of the ministries.
And doing Seven Daily Sins.
I think about some of the ministries we've done, over the years. We've done they seem to have run their course because there was great momentum for them. There seemed to be great things happening. And it just seemed like, well, we're just doing something to do it.
Right.
And is that what we really want to do?
Right.
Or is people really coming? Are they gaining? Are they growing spiritually? Or maybe we should change our course.
Right. But maybe there is a boredom. I mean, that certain people have. And I think I really do think that people at times there is a lot of anxiety in the society. There is a lot of downness. There is a lot of complaining. And I like how he puts in a book. He says, listen, if you're a person who's just sitting around complaining about how bad the world is, and you're doing nothing, you're basically part of the problem. I mean, you're not going to do anything to fix about it. And all you're doing is depressing yourself and bring yourself down into the state of unhappiness or this anxiety of just being listless in your spiritual life, because you're going to point out the faults in everyone else, but you're not doing a thing to really make the world a better place. And you and I have seen this. Come on, I mean, how many times have we seen it, complaints in church, and you're thinking, then do something.
Yeah.
If you're going to sit around and complain about the church, well, the church isn't this, church isn't that. How many times have you and I had that conversation where we're asking, and what are you doing about it to that person, right? Or we're wondering about it. And what are you doing about it?
You guys should be doing this. Well,
exactly.
Okay.
But what are you doing? Or they'll just sit there, well, the church isn't friendly enough, church isn't blah, 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 whatever the complaint is. Okay, but what are you doing to make it better? I'm having a hard time. Okay, what are you doing to make it better? Because it's easy. Anybody can sit and point out flaws about anything, but what are you doing to make it better? And I think that what he's saying is you got to get that point of doing things to make things better. And I know for me, even in life, and I don't know how it is for you with hunting or anything else, if you add certain dimensions, like the one year you got the camera for the bow, and that was kind of cool, and it kind of added a different dimension. For me this year, I'm trying to equip my kayak so I can do more video recording on my phone. So I'm trying to get the right clamps that actually aren't going to fall into the lake, so I lose my phone again and get in trouble with my wife. But it's just adding different dimensions to make it interesting, so you're not doing the same thing the same way all the time. I think honestly, your physical life with your intimacy with your spouse, maybe you shouldn't be doing things the same way all the time. The way you operate and conduct and the way you do your prayer life, maybe it's good to go pray somewhere else once in a while, right? Yep. Or do something different in your Bible reading, or do a different devotional. But to keep yourself alive, to keep yourself energized, by not getting into these ruts where you feel like you're all down and.
No, I agree. Yeah, and I think to a point where it's somewhere's got to come back and trigger you to evaluate what you're doing, right? Evaluate what you're doing and then course correct. Right. Or do something different.
Yeah. It's worth thinking about, Steve, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know one thing, go back up. I've been begging my wife to go out and hunt with me because she can film, but she won't come. She says it's too cold. But anyway, I keep working on her.
Hey,
I say,
you know what? My wife just added zest to her life. She got rollerblades. So now she tells me, well, now I'll go out with you. Now, I've been running on that. I bet you I've been running on the trail for 10 years, and I've been running by myself for 10 years. I invite her constantly, except when I know it's real cold, she won't want to go. I invite her in the morning. I invite her in the afternoon. I just always invite her if I'm going. If you want to come. It's too windy. It's too cold. It's too many bugs, too many whatever. Well, now she got rollerblades. So now she goes, well, now I can go because I can keep up with you and I'll just stay with you. So I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold those little rollerblades. Yeah. I'm going to hold those little rollerblades to the fire. But that's something she's doing. And I think it's a good thing. It's good exercise. I'm all for exercise. I'm all for fitness. That's something you're into. She's pretty good at it. So yeah, by all means, do it. It's just something different that you're doing. So spiritually, we don't want to get into that place of just unrest, of anxiety, of where we're not really seeking God. You don't want to make excuses for not going to church. And that'll be another show. We'll come back and do that one because I guess we've gone long enough in this episode. But we appreciate you tuning in and listening and hearing. I would highly recommend picking this book up. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon, probably get it on eBay or wherever it is you buy from. The 7 Deadly Sins is a common book written by James Stalker. It's been a great challenge for me to go through it, and I would just encourage you to pick it up. And the next, we'll go through the 7 cardinal virtues, and that's the next part of it. You guys all have a blessed and awesome week.